Genesis GV70, this time the EV version. We've already covered the GV70 in great detail, and this is almost exactly the same. Price point wise, this starts at $65,000, and we're in the fully loaded one, the Prestige version, for about $75,000, which, you know, I'm not going to talk about that just this second. The outside looks almost identical with the exception of the grille and the back end, because you don't need tailpipes, you don't need a huge opening on the front for airflow, so the charging ports on the front, and then the inside is almost a complete carryover from the Genesis GV70 with the internal combustion engine, almost identical with the exception of like the boost mode button and some of the menus in the infotainment. So the pros and the cons are here. This is forcing the other luxury brands to really look at what they're doing here, because my biggest argument, as cars become more expensive, my expectations go sky high. If I'm paying $75,000 for a luxury car, I don't want an interior out of a $35,000 car. I'm sorry, I just don't. And I think in terms of material choice, the way the leathers work, the headliner material, the way things feel, and how isolated this cabin is, it's proof that you can do this for a lot less money. When you look at the equal BMW, Audi, and Mercedes, or like even the Porsches, you're having to pay like $150,000 in a lot of cases to get something that has the perceived quality of this car. And that's what Genesis is great at. Honestly, it's a special vehicle and a special brand on that point, but they have had to make some trade-offs in other areas of the car to reach this price point. The pros of the interior is it's super solid, super quiet. The negatives are there's some gimmicky shit, like the 3D gauge cluster is pointless. The infotainment needs some updating. There's no wireless Android Auto, at least in this car, so that's kind of frustrating. The storage is just, it's abysmal. They traded off the way you use this thing for that type of function versus the way that it looks. But let's head into the shop. Jack's gonna hit you with the technical details.
In the shop with the Genesis GV70 Electrified. This is one of 3 fully electrified models that Genesis currently offers in their lineup, which means this is not their first rodeo. This has the same essential formula of the G80 Electrified, which means for this GV70, it is not on eGIMP, which the GV60 is on. They took their internal combustion architecture and essentially Frankensteined it to accept 2 electric motors, one front, one rear, and a giant electric battery pack. In this vehicle's case, it's 77.4 kilowatt hours. It has the same charging architecture, which means it's 800 volt, which is great. Charge times from 10 to 80% are pretty quick. It's like 18 to 20 minutes on a fast charger, assuming you have one in your area and you meet all the various conditions. The total system output at both electric motors is 429 horsepower most of the time. However, when you put this into boost mode, it gets it up to like 480-ish or 490. The main thing is this is the most refined of all the GV70 models, and the extra sound deadening they add. And actually one of the reasons they had to add that extra sound deadening to the interior space of this vehicle is in a traditional ICE vehicle, that drivetrain covers up some of the wind noise. They didn't have this in this car, so they had to make the cabin quieter to keep it feeling premium. Now, let's talk about suspension quickly. This is on GV70 front and rear subframes, which means it's strut front, multi-link rear. There's a good use of aluminum, and obviously everything's covered up. So with all that said, I think it's time for us to go take this for a quick drive with Mark. Mark?
Yes?
Boost mode in sport. Prepare to feel Korean engineering.
Oh! I just spilled my chai latte on my pants. I just pressed my jeans this morning and starched them. I can't afford a stain.
Well, Mark, my allergies are on max because I'm allergic to this thing.
Yeah, we're back into a Korean car?
Yeah, clearly this is a case of, in my eyes, fake it till you make it. And what I mean by that is this is a brand, and I talked about it a little bit in the shop. It is remarkable what Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis have been able to do. They can recycle product faster than anyone I know, or any brand I know, and their ability to get out new competitive models in this space is unrivaled. But they are a brand, at least in their non-N or Namyang cars, that do not care because they don't have the time to focus on the finer details of dynamics. When you're driving this to like 8/10, it's great. It handles well, it's way quieter than the regular GV70. It's a nice interior space, it looks good, it does all the things that you need it to. And when you lean on the electronic systems, you leave everything on, it puts the power down well, it does all the things that a regular person 99% of the time want our car to do.
Yeah.
But unlike the German brands and the Japanese brands, when you turn everything off on this thing, they don't sweat the details because I don't think they have the time to, and they realize the vast majority of their buyers don't care. I don't know anyone who's going to buy a GV70 model and turn everything off and try to drive this remotely at its limit, because when you do, just like the GV60, here's what it does.
What
It's just
happened to the
rolling
tires?
burnouts.
Where did the tires go, Jack?
They can't put any power down leaving intersections, and then mid-corner, or when you're actually driving this thing hard, which I can't do because there's traffic, it's all over the place. It is struggling to deal with the power in a way that many of the other, let's call it more sorted EVs, like the i5 or the i4 from BMW, the Lucid vehicles, some of the Porsche products, they spend more time sweating the dynamic details to make these cars, I guess, better to drive.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, this thing's great.
Yeah, to be fair to the EV part of this, this philosophy carries over to their internal combustion cars too, almost all of them. And since we're talking about Genesis, clearly there is more time spent in engineering in terms of the things that it does good. And you spend a lot of time talking about driving dynamics, and let's just throw that out the window for just a little bit here and talk about the things that is really exceptional about this brand.
It's very quiet.
You look at what they did with the G90 that we're in, which was one of the best luxury cars that I'd been in quite a while. It looks the part, it feels the part, and I'm not going to argue is $70,000+ worth it for a disposable EV at this point. What I will say is it looks great from the outside for what it is. They have
interior's beautiful.
It is. It's such a huge wow factor, and it's not like the gimmicky like bullshit where you're okay, like you said about the CX-90, where it looks good from 4 feet away, but you get up close. This car looks good up close, 4 feet away, and you feel like you're in a legitimate luxury car. And that's where they put the time. Things like the dash, the headliner, the attention to detail stuff is really strong.
It's nicer than like an X3 on the inside.
It is. They do a great job, and it rides amazing. The ride control and body control going on a straight road, it isolates everything out. Their noise canceling software combined with how quiet these interiors are is really on a next level compared to all the competitors. I mean, you really have to go up really far up the price chain to Mercedes and Audi to get this level of isolation. So they're able to do that for a lot lower price point, but you got to trade something out, trade something, right? And it's this. They're not putting their development budget into trying to make this the best handling platform because it's not the place and time for it. First generation EV, why? So that's the fine print.
For me, the thing that kills me more than the way it drives, and to your point, the vast majority of the time, you're never going to try to hustle this thing around. You're just going to be putting in traffic.
You're literally driving this like you're half comatose.
Yep.
That's what it does best.
So I would have taken smaller power output from both electric motors and more range, because out here in our cold weather, this battery pack, I picked it up from your house into like 95% range. And to be fair, you're never supposed to charge these things up to 100%.
Yeah.
In our weather, it was like 180-ish miles of range.
Yeah.
It's for a primarily highway cruiser.
I charged it to 90 at the shop, and I got back home at about 198 miles of range and let it sit outside overnight on purpose, and it
dropped 20 miles of range.
Yeah.
So that, to me, I wish this thing had more range. I like the way it rides most of the time. I love the fact that it's quiet. It's just if you want something that drives well and you're someone who prioritizes or likes knowing that their money is going towards good suspension components, thought out suspension kinematics, this is not going to be the car for you.
I know you're going to get into the final thoughts, and I'll let you cover it. I will leave.
No, I'm going to let you cover it.
Oh, you want me to do it?
I want you to cover it. I'm allergic to this thing.
All right, I will. Final thoughts on the GV70 Electric. And we kind of alluded to this during the drive. You're not buying it, you're leasing it. Given the price point and where we're at with the first generation EV products, you would not want to be stuck with this as a depreciating asset. It's going to lose more than half its value in at least 3 years. And the repairability of like battery packs and electric motor are going to continue to be more expensive until there's some standardization and brands figure out what they want to do going forward. Almost every brand doesn't have recycling programs for battery packs and all that. So what you're left with as a consumer is if you're buying this and it's out of warranty, you could be paying $15,000 for a battery pack. You could be paying 30 or even more, depending on the brand and availability of these, as suppliers are not going to be on the hook for making some weird esoteric old like legacy battery pack long term. So you're leasing it. How are you going to deal with it? Well, the reality is it drives better than the GV70 with the internal combustion engine because you don't have to deal with any transmission tuning. The power output of it, that's just a far smoother driving vehicle. The interior is quieter, which it's already insanely quiet on all Genesis products, and you know, really it is a very good riding car, and almost everything works on it. The negative parts is, like every Hyundai and Genesis and Kia product we talk about, with the exception of the ends, they don't drive that great. You know, the stability control tuning, they don't have the chassis right, so they try to fix it in all electronics, and even that just doesn't feel right. So if you're just driving straight on the highway and you're using this as a cruiser for short drives, you're going to love it. Believe me, it is that good. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the dealer experience, because recently I just had somebody message me about, you know, they wanted like a fun or a good like luxury sedan, and they were looking at the G70 and G80. And I said, definitely look at the G80. It's a better car, but if you want more fun, G70. So he looked at them both and he said, as much as he wanted the cars, he went into a Genesis dealership and they just dicked him around, like the same crap with the Hyundai stuff. So he went to an Acura dealership, got $5,000 off MSRP, and he walked out of there right away happy that, you know, and this continues to be a complaint I hear over and over again. You know, you have to go in, if you really love this brand, you have to go with the expectations or find the right dealer that's going to treat you right. And I think you're really going to love these things because there's so much potential there. I think eventually they'll get there. It's just kind of a weird spot to be in as this brand gets booted up further. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.